see you still like the granola type. Hello, my name is Will, and this is Exploding Helicopter, the podcast that loves attending music festivals in the snow. Bigfoot. You know him best as the star of countless grainy photographs, dubious documentaries, and an entire merchandising industry devoted to exploiting his "he's actually real" credentials. Now, in the 70s, at the height of Bigfoot mania, there were numerous efforts to turn the hairy horror into a cinematic terror. Yet the only nightmares audiences suffered after watching these terrible efforts were inspired by the time they'd wasted on watching these miserable movies. Worse was to follow in the 80s, when old Sasquatch suffered the ultimate indignity and found himself turned into a comedy sidekick in the film and TV sitcom Harry and the Hendersons. Truly a fate worse than being debunked. Since then, the wood-loving wild man has continued to appear on the big screen in one shaggy guise or another, including the film we're reviewing here, 2012's Bigfoot. To help me review the film, I'm joined by a man who's only here to promote his book on golf. It's the DTV Connoisseur himself, Matt Poirier. Welcome back to the show, buddy.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk about this movie.
Well, I'm excited to have you here because ever since I watched this film, I had at the back of my mind the thought that, there's really only one man for the job here. And unfortunately, they couldn't make it. So I'm here with you instead.
Well, because the funny thing is actually the Bigfoot. We're going to get into the movie, but when I was watching it, I was like, boy, there's almost like a great. It's almost verges on territory where Fred Anderson could be doing this episode, right? Like I'm here, I guess, for the DTV and the pop culture part. That's maybe why it fits better for me. But yeah, with him doing, it's not quite a kaiju movie, but it's a disaster kind of movie. So.
For the avoidance of any doubt, you were my first pick for this episode. But I could definitely, if I had to go to a second choice, I think Fred would have been a perfect guest for this show. But before we get really our teeth stuck into Bigfoot, the film we're reviewing here was produced by the Asylum. Now, I'm sure our listeners will be familiar with them. They are specialists in monster movies, mockbusters and the like. But I wondered what your opinion of their output was and where you saw their place in the DTV landscape.
Yeah, so when I first started my site in like 07, 08, Asylum movies were easily available. Like you could go to any, Blockbuster or whatever and find them, but they'd also, they'd end up on TV a lot. They didn't always have names in them though. And so for me, it was almost more the joke of, reviewing something called, like Snakes on a Train instead of Snakes on a Plane or, whatever. And then, they started getting people like C. Thomas Howell involved. So then I was reviewing them a little bit more. But it feels like, initially early on, they were getting sort of like new directors and new actors who were just excited to try to do something. And there was almost an earnestness in the approach that went along with the, they sort of betrayed the mockbuster aspect, that you could watch something like Transmorphers and say, okay, well, this director's really trying, these actors are trying, so there's something there. Where it seems like later on, it has just become like, let's just throw stuff together. I don't want to say it's a cynical approach. It's almost like they want to do this sort of goofy movie, and they wrap themselves in the goofiness to prevent us from saying, well, this stuff's bad, or this, there's aspects of it that don't work. The other thing is, I feel like they want to try to harken back to this tradition of the 50s and 60s monster movie. And I do think there is, I don't know what the terms I want to say. There's sort of like this sense of, from people, modern people, to think that like, oh, well, Bird-Eye Gordon or whoever were making these very serious, earnest movies when they were making, Attack of the Six, Colossal Man or something like that, Attack of the Grasshoppers or whatever the movies were, when they were probably being goofy too. So I do get like the goofiness part of it when they're making these kind of movies, but I don't know, there's a charm in those 50s and 60s ones that the Asylum doesn't always capture.
Matt, I completely agree with what you said, and you have sort of what you've just said there is a perfect distillation of really the sort of point I wanted to make, which was I feel there are different phases or different eras in sort of the Asylum's output, and it did seem for a while that they were working in a nice sweet spot where there was a certain level of quality to what they were doing. They had some interesting names who were in the films, and the films were being made with that earnestness. They were perhaps a little bit light-hearted in approach. There was a sort of a nod and a wink, well, probably more than a nod and a wink, to the lineage, the tradition of the films that they were sniping or perhaps even sending up on occasion, but they still worked because they were in that sort of, I guess they had a sort of happy marriage of being something that where people were trying, where there was a kind of a sincerity of effort behind the work. Whereas I think in recent years, it just feels like they're making content. Yeah, some of their recent output just find so depressing because there's just nothing going on. There's no imagination. There's no spark of life. There's no quality actors really anymore working in it, and there almost seems to be the actors. They almost seem to be like completely unprofessional, like people who've just, I don't even know if they're aspiring, but they just want to get like one, they just want to be in a movie one time, and that's good enough for the Asylum to work with. And yeah, I found myself, as I say, very depressed by their recent output.
Yeah, and one of the funny things is like, I mean, when I was early on, like, when Twitter first started, like the 2010s, early period, they actually followed me back on Twitter. So we were like mutuals, and they would sometimes like some of my posts when I would post about their movies. But I had to create the Asylum rule for the Hall of Fame because I ended up reviewing enough of their movies because they had enough people in different ones and some of the ones that they created that I had over 30 of them. And I felt like, well, if I'm doing at least 30 of their movies, I should put them in the Hall of Fame. So now for anybody that I get into the Hall of Fame, I try to get them in before the Asylum rule kicks in for the automatic induction. But it is one of those things where it's like, every once in a while, like nowadays, they don't always have names in them, but every once in a while, you'd see one that had a name. Somebody would be in it, like a Mario Van Peebles, or like Ming Na was in one that I reviewed a little while back, and it's always interesting to get a name like that in one of those movies, and then from there, it's just a matter of like, okay, well, how much are they actually caring when they make this movie? And the name itself, like that, I'm sure the actor's doing a professional job, but there's also this sense of like, they probably get that person for one day, and how much they put the movie around them and everything. It sometimes you come out of it and it feels cynical, and then other times I come out of it and I'm like, okay, I had a fun time with that. And so it's just it can be very hit or miss with them.
Okay, I think it's time to get stuck into Bigfoot. So let's listen to a series of sound bites stitched together to create a summary of the film.
You have had another all-night ride with the one, the only, R.V. Henderson. We got 2 days to clear all those trees.
This festival is destroying 50 acres of South Dakota forest. The desecration stops now.
Remy, you just couldn't stay out of my spotlight, could you? Let's hear it for Alice Cooper!
Get the National Guard! Nature attacked us in self-defense.
Whoa!
What's the job?
We're gonna kill Bigfoot.
Picking up something on the infrared.
Hope that's gonna be big enough.
Only reason you want to kill Bigfoot is just to piss me off. What is this, a hootenanny?
We need a full airstrike on the top of Mount Rushmore.
It's going down!
I wish your mother were here.
Harley Henderson is a musician turned entrepreneur who is looking to put his sleepy hometown on the map by hosting an 80s music festival. Those plans are thrown into chaos when Bigfoot suddenly stomps out of the nearby forest and begins chewing up the performers and audience alike. And you thought the Fire Festival was a disaster. In the wake of the carnage, Henderson quickly hatches a new plan to kill Bigfoot and turn him into a tourist attraction. Unfortunately, Henderson's efforts to get rich quickly bring him into conflict with Simon Quinn, a musician turned eco-activist who wants to protect Bigfoot, believing him to be the last of his species. Adding an extra frisson to their conflict is the fact that Henderson and Quinn were both bandmates from an old 70s rock group. As their conflict escalates, Harley assembles a team of hunters and mercenaries to track down Bigfoot while Simon musters his band of nature-loving do-gooders to save it. The situation culminates, though, in a dramatic showdown on Mount Rushmore. In the cast, we have the Partridge Family's Danny Bonaducci, the Brady Bunch's Barry Williams, Twin Peaks' Sherilyn Fenn, and the godfather of shock rock himself, Alice Cooper. Directing and also starring in the film is Bruce Davison, who you'll remember previously starred alongside Bigfoot in the Harry and the Hendersons TV show. Random aside, this film was written by Brian Brinkman and Miko Robert Rutare, who has a lot of credits scripting Asylum movies to his name, and there really doesn't seem to be anything interesting there. But curiously, he is the writer on the recent animated Predator film, Predator Killer of Killers. So, very strange lurch into mainstream movie making there. I don't know what the story behind that is. Anyway, Bigfoot has an average user rating on IMDb of 2.5 and an average user rating of 2.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is interesting as that's works out as significantly higher. But anyway, with all of that out of the way, Matt, what did you make of Bigfoot?
So, as a fan of sort of the shows that they were talking about, and I think the pop culture aspect, I had a lot of fun with that. There's almost like a lineage that kind of goes through the cast, where you've got Bonaducci and Barry Williams, who did their shows were late 60s, early 70s. And then you've got Howard Hessman as the mayor, who's WKRP, was late 70s, early 80s. Sherilyn Fenn, Twin Peaks, late 80s, early 90s. And then Andre Royo was in The Wire. Yeah, which was, so they almost had this like through running piece there. And also Cynthia Geary, who plays one of the young women who's enamored with Barry Williams' character. She was on a show called Northern Exposure, which I think is supposed to kind of tie with this. So you have that aspect of it that's like really fun. But then, when you were on my podcast recently, we talked about two Scott Adkins movies, one of which was Accident Man, Hitman's Holiday. And, you were talking about all kind of the inside jokes there, for UK watchers. But the thing is, the movie had like this robustness around it that for myself, who only got like maybe one or two of those jokes, there was a lot more for me to enjoy. I feel like this movie, it's almost just like, here's the pop culture stuff. And then the Bigfoot thing is just kind of over the top craziness. And it's like, there you go. What do you think? And so I don't even know where to go with that, where it's like the pop culture stuff is fun, but then the substance around it maybe not so much.
Well, I think that's actually quite fair, and I actually think that's actually a very clever move by the movie makers, probably, to actually make the pop culture stuff the kind of the bulk of the movie, because let's be honest, this is an Asylum movie, and Bigfoot is rendered in some low quality CGI, so you probably want the audience to be looking elsewhere, really. And in some ways, Bigfoot is a sort of MacGuffin that drives the main conflict of the plot rather than being the main storyline themselves. I mean, we're going to kind of get into the pop culture aspects of this movie in a little bit. But I really enjoyed this film. It's certainly no classic. It's not a great movie by any objective standards. But the thing I really appreciated about it is that it knows what it is, and it has fun with that. And I appreciated that there was a good concept here, and it puts its tongue in its cheek, and it has a lot of fun with it. And I think that this is, if you are somebody who spends most of their time watching the Criterion Channel, I really don't think Bigfoot is for you. But if you have a broader range of tastes in movies and want to put on something that's kind of quite brainless on a Saturday afternoon, I think Bigfoot, if you go into it, enter into it with the right spirit, it's definitely a film that you can enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of fun aspects to it. I mean, Barry Williams playing that environmentalist who seems to really just be in it to get women. It's so beautiful. And it's like, because, he would have been born, he was born in the mid 50s, but like this character, this like, mystical guru kind of character or this like sort of environmental guru character that just surrounds himself with women. And it's just completely full of it, when he's talking. It's like he must have met enough of those kinds of people, the way that he's playing that character so well. And then, Bonaducci, when he kind of revived his career in the 90s, that's what he was doing, was DJ for Morning Drive. And then that led to a talk show where it was like a male version of The View that he was doing. So he was doing that as well. And so Morning Drive DJ is great. But then again, he plays it like this really like shady manager, which I'm sure he's encountered plenty of shady managers in his time that just, lie about who they got. I'm sure he was probably told many a times, oh, we've got so-and-so for this thing. And then he gets there and there is no so-and-so. So the way that those two anchor it is so great. And then like Sherilyn Fenn as almost like us, right? She's almost like the viewer. I mean, that end sequence with where they're fighting on Mount Rushmore, where she's just like yelling at them, like, "Come on, guys, just get down!" And it's like they're kind of so self-important that they're fighting, and she's just like, "Get down, get away from that. Let the National Guard take care of things." And so I felt like that was kind of a funny aspect of that as well.
Well, definitely. Let's talk a little bit more and a little bit more in depth about the casting here, because we have, as I sort of mentioned at the top of the show, we've got Barry Williams from the Brady Bunch pitted against Dana Bonaducci from the Partridge Family. Now, those sitcoms went out in the late 60s, early 70s, and while I am aware of them, they've not had any lasting afterlife in UK pop culture. I mean, I've never seen a single episode of those shows. So, Matt, I wondered, as somebody who is an American based in the US, I wondered if you could help me out here, and probably help out many of our listeners, and if you could dig into the joke maybe behind the casting here of these two men.
Yeah, because the funny thing about those shows is they weren't competing shows. They were both on Friday nights. So Brady Bunch starts in '69, Partridge Family in 1970, but they were on the same night. The Partridge Family was always more successful than the Bradys because the Brady Bunch, it was created by this guy Sherwood Schwartz, and he had this idea. He just wanted it to be like this sort of this programming for kids, but it ended up being so kitschy and schmaltzy and just all goofy. The show generally would only get renewed for half seasons. Like, that's because it was always just sort of struggling here and there. But it's almost like the decisions that he made at the time made it so the show was not popular, because people at the time were looking at it like, what is this? This is too goofy and schmaltzy for us to take seriously. That when the show was in reruns and younger audiences found it then, they had a lot of fun with it. I mean, I think about myself in the 80s, the show was just goofy. We just loved watching it then. When you juxtapose that with the Partridge Family, which was supposed to be the monkeys with the cow sills. I don't know if you're familiar with the cow sills.
I'm not, no. Monkeys, yes.
Yeah,
cow sills, no.
Yeah, so the Cowsills were essentially the Partridge Family. They were a musical group in the '60s that were, it's a family. They're led by the mother, Barbara, and then they had kids that were as old as teenagers all the way down to like the youngest daughter, who I think was 7. They had 2 big hits. They had a song called "Hair." You might know that one. Give me a head with hair. And then the other one that they had was it's called The Rain, The Rain, the Park, and Other Things. Which again, if you had illegally downloaded it in the early 2000s, it was probably labeled "I Love the Flower Girl." So those were their hits, and they were going to do again, like sort of a kids-oriented version of the Monkees with them. The problem was they wanted to cast Shirley Jones as the mom, and the Cowsills were like, well, we have a mom. It's Barbara. So they pulled out, and the show had to cast a family, and the first person they cast was David Cassidy, and they found out 2 things about him. One was that he's Shirley Jones's stepson. They didn't know that when they were casting him. But 2, that he could actually sing. And when they discovered he could actually sing, they started recording songs with him. The biggest, I Think I Love You in 1970, it knocks, I think, Let It Be off the top of the charts. But so then they completely turned the show around, so it's about making David Cassidy a pop star, and that skewed the audience. It meant you had like especially older girls, in high school who just thought he was the dreamiest. It made the show more popular in that sense, but I think it also hurt the Brady Bunch's audience, because then it was like, oh, you watch the Bradys, that's a kid's show. This is the Partridge Family. And then what happens is David Cassidy gets burnt out, and he leaves the show in '74, and they just end up canceling it altogether. Same year that the Brady Bunch is canceled. And then when the 2 shows go into rerun syndication for the Partridge Family, because that show was more based around David Cassidy, the rest of the cast really had no they had no feelings about any reunions or anything like that. They weren't really, there was no emotional investment for them necessarily. So like Susan Day, we know she goes on to do LA Law, and she was doing like adult themed pictures and things like that at the time. Whereas the Bradys, they were kind of all a unit together, and when things started to come up for like reunions and stuff like that, they were all for it. So like there's the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, which was originally pitched to the Partridge Family, and they said no, but then the Bradys did it. Then they started doing other shows like Brady Girls Get Married in '81, Very Brady Christmas in '86, which leads to a TV show, just the Bradys and all that. So like you get all these things, which again, I think it kept the Bradys as a focus in our pop culture minds. And like you said, there was the remake in the '90s that was sort of, again, it was just kind of played up all the kitschy parts of the show. And so they've always kind of been that. It's like the Bradys, it's always this kind of kitschy thing. And there's so many little aspects of the Bradys that are just part of daily life that if you say something, people would know it. Like when Marcia gets hit in the head with a football, in the nose with a football, or the dog Tiger. Everybody was afraid that Jan was allergic to Tiger. They find out, no, it's the flea powder that she was allergic to. All these little pieces that people just know if you just say the Bradys and you just talk about it. Whereas the Partridge Family, it's interesting. They never really had that. I think because their cast never really kind of they never really embraced that kind of thing. They all kind of went and did their separate things after. But when the show was in reruns, they were kind of pitted against each other versus, when the show first aired. And I think for audiences, born in like the early 70s kind of throughout, there was a sense of you're either a Partridge or you're a Brady, which I'm more of a Brady Bunch fan, even though I like them both. But so I think that's where the rivalry piece would come in here, because at the time the shows really weren't rivals. They were supposed to be, leading into each other.
Okay, well, interesting that rivalry is something that sort of developed after the initial airing of the series, and you either had to be you're either a Beatles or a Stones fan. It's it seems you got to pick one team or the other.
Right. Well, in America, it's, as you saw from Pulp Fiction, it's Beatles or Elvis. So it's like I love the Beatles, but I'm an Elvis guy. But I love the Beatles still. So, but so it's funny how that's different in America versus in the UK.
Well, let's discuss the conflict of the film, and the conflict of the film between Barry Williams and Danny Bonaducci here, because that's really very much the heart of the movie here. And I have to say, even without an awareness of the pop culture significance of the two actors here, I don't think I'd ever probably seen them before in anything else on TV or as a film. I still really enjoyed their beef here, and it sounds like you're in a similar sort of situation to me.
Yeah, no, they play their parts so well. It's interesting. So I believe the two of them were pitted against each other in celebrity boxing, and the thing was that they didn't really do a good job pairing them, because Danny Bonaducci is like well versed in martial arts. He was taking steroids, I think, to like become buff or everything like that. And so he completely destroyed Williams. And I think in this film, the Asylum kind of set it up so that Barry could kind of maybe get him back a little bit, because he wins the two fights they have. But I think I don't know necessarily what relationship the two of them would have had outside of the two shows, because. Yeah, I don't know how those two shows, they probably would have seen each other at like fan expos and things like that for a while. But in terms of having seen them in anything else, like either of them, if they were doing anything else, it would have been as a nod to being on their shows. Like neither of them really acted outside of their characters. And so, so anytime you would have seen them in anything, it would have been like this, where they're sort of playing their parts on these shows. Yeah,
as I said in terms of my question, I really enjoyed the conflict between these two guys. There's a certain pantomime quality to it. You get various barbs throughout the film, with people sort of saying, who was the real talent in the group they were both in together. And I mean, it doesn't speak very highly of my sense of my humour, but I enjoyed the sort of rivalries about who was sleeping with whose mother. I thought that was quite fun as well. I also appreciated the fact that these two men, they seem to be certainly quite happy to come across as massive egotists and various levels of sort of douchebags. And as you say, it's really fascinating what they do with the characters here, because as you say, Danny Bonaducci, he's a very shady, quick buck merchant, happy to lie, cheat, and steal to get whatever it is to move his projects forward and so forth. And then, as you say, Barry Williams he's almost like a sinister cult leader, as you say. Yeah, I mean, they don't lean too hard into that, but there's definitely. I wish they had leaned a little bit more into it. I think that could have been very enjoyable. But there's enough of it there to that you can have fun with that, him as this sort of guru who, as you were saying, surrounds himself with young, beautiful women.
Well, yes, and I think the mom thing even harkens back to the shows, because I know David Cassidy, for example, even though Shirley Jones was his stepmother, I believe he had a crush on her. And then I believe Barry Williams, I don't know with Florence Henderson, who played his mom, I thought I'd read somewhere that they I don't think they hooked up necessarily, because their ages were, he would have been like He was born in '54, so he would have been very young. But I think he had a crush on her as well. So I think that's part of the joke is that they're TV moms. That they were both rather fetching, and so I think that's part of the joke as well there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for adding that extra layer to my appreciation of the film here. We got some other well-known faces in this movie here. You mentioned Sherilyn Fenn, but also Alice Cooper turns up briefly as one of the performers at the music festival that Danny Bonaducci is looking to stage here. And I loved his cameo in the movie. I mean, for me, it should be a template for, like, if you're going to have Alice Cooper to kind of cameo in your movie, this was the perfect use for him. What was your take on it?
Yeah, no, exactly. So this harkens back to the previous. There's another Asylum effort, Megapython versus Gatoroid, which pit Tiffany versus Debbie Gibson. And so, similar, pop icons from the 80s, and a similar idea that you have a binary there who you choose. And that one featured Mickey Dolenz. And I think he gets eaten by a python, I think, in that one. So they were kind of trying to do something similar here, I think. But to your point, what was so beautiful about it is that Alice Cooper has obviously dealt with these Danny Bonaducci style character style managers. So Bonaducci's dealt with this kind of manager, and he's like playing this character up to the hilt. And then Alice Cooper's dealt with that guy. I almost get a sense that he was like getting out everything he's ever felt about dealing with these kind of people. I mean, the line, my favorite line is he said something about like, oh yeah, he probably didn't like you. I've talked to you for 5 minutes and I already don't like you. It was like so beautiful.
Yeah, as I say, I just felt this was like the perfect cameo. Lots of Alice Cooper kind of being happy to send himself up a little bit. Lots of sort of jokes that play upon his reputation and persona. And yeah, it was a great value add, great bit of fun in the film.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's exactly what you'd want from that. I guess it's even more than I would have expected I wanted from that. It was just, it was a ton of fun.
One thing I wanted to talk about was, what did you make of the Bigfoot action that we get in this film? Obviously, as this is an Asylum film, we're talking about CGI here that isn't of the highest quality. So, let's grade on the curve here, because, there's no point, I think, giving it a completely objective criticism, because, we just end up saying that it's terrible. But where, taking that into account, what did you make really of the Bigfoot action here?
Well, because I think when you were talking about Bigfoot earlier on, and you were talking about kind of the history of Bigfoot, nobody's ever talked about Bigfoot being King Kong, which is essentially what Bigfoot is here. And so when I saw that, I was like, this is really weird. Like, it was a weird decision to go with that. And I don't know what made this. I wonder if maybe early on when they were testing ideas for a CGI Bigfoot, was it more expensive to get somebody in a costume, like a tall person in a costume, than it was to, I guess it would have been, to do like the physical stunts and all of that would have been more expensive. So they were like, okay, well, a little Bigfoot doesn't really, I say little Bigfoot, like a normal size Bigfoot, a 7'2" Bigfoot doesn't really work. And so let's just go with this bigger thing here. I don't think I've ever seen Bigfoot like that before. I don't think I've ever seen Bigfoot replaced by King Kong. And I also don't know why they didn't start calling it something else, if it wasn't Bigfoot. But so that was very strange. And then, like you said, like the CGI one, it was interesting because he's like essentially like stomping people out like they're bugs or something like that. And it is weird to see that it's kind of like a herky jerky kind of thing. But on the other hand, I mean, some of the things are kind of funny, like when he's punting people, like hundreds of miles away, or hundreds of feet away. It's kind of funny.
I want to talk about the ending of this movie, because it is really quite mad to me, the ending of this film. And, we don't worry about spoilers here. I mean, if you really want to see this Asylum version of Bigfoot, then stop recording now, go away and watch it. But anyway, getting back to the end of this film, Bonaducci and Williams both end up dead. Yet in the epilogue to this film, we find out that the local community have built a statue celebrating the, air quotes here, friendship of these two men. Two men who we've seen bickering for the last 90 minutes. Two men who, in their own ways, have caused the death and destruction we witnessed in this film. Matt, was your mind as boggled as mine by the ending here?
Yeah, I thought it was definitely goofy. I mean, because they have before that, right? They have their North by Northwest moment, right, where they're fighting on Mount Rushmore, and Sherilyn Fenn is just like annoyed with them. She's yelling at them like, "Just get down, stop fighting," because the National Guard is trying to shoot missiles at Bigfoot, and then I guess what happens is because of their fighting, they lure Bigfoot over to Abraham Lincoln's face, where the Air Force or the National Guard, whoever it is, blows up Lincoln's face and them and everybody else with it, and that's I guess how they killed Bigfoot. And so I don't know if that was Sherilyn Fenn making it sound like the two of them sacrificed themselves to lure Bigfoot over to Abraham Lincoln. I don't know exactly, or Howard Hessman making it up because he's the one he played the mayor in the movie, and he kept trying to get more tourists to their town, and so maybe he invented this concept of the two of them sacrificing themselves, and that's I guess the joke, because we know that's not what happened at all. I think that's what it was. I think it's more about Hessman as this cheesy mayor who was like risking the town's life. Like he was
in cahoots with Bonaducci, isn't he? So yeah, he's
right.
Okay. I like that. I like that idea that he's trying to just sort of cover up his complicity in the disaster that is visited on this town.
Yeah, because it's almost like Jaws, right? It was like you got to close the beaches, and Hessman's like, he's like, no, we're not closing the beaches, right? Because like you said, he goes forward with the concert, despite the fact that one, there was this massive snowstorm that came in and kind of should have ruined the concert, but two, because they wanted the money from that, and of course Bigfoot, massacres everybody at the concert thing. But then he's all in on Bonaducci's idea of killing Bigfoot and creating some big museum to Bigfoot that they would have. I guess people going to Mount Rushmore would go to this museum as well. Yeah, so he was always kind of this shady mayor type who's always trying to make money. So yeah, there's that part too.
Yeah, so this film ends, as I said, with a terrible statue being unveiled of Bonaducci and Barry Williams, and it reminded me a bit of the ending of the Kevin Costner movie The Postman, where we get to see a statue of Big Kev with delivering some mail, and that I think any film that ends with a statue unveiling is that's something to worry about.
I didn't even think of that connection. I wonder if they were poking fun at that a little bit, because The Postman was one of those. It was classic Kevin Costner, right? And he thinks he's the greatest. He makes this character that's like, and then you watch it and you're like, this is ridiculous. And it's like that statue at the end is the cherry on top of the ridiculous sundae that is that movie. I wonder if there was a little bit of the kind of poking fun at that, because I didn't even make that connection, but it is kind of the same thing.
I wonder where that statue is now. Do you reckon Kevin's got it at his home on his ranch somewhere?
Yes, he probably, with those Yellowstone checks, he's probably got though of course I wonder if he had to sell it to make those
Horizon movies.
Right, exactly. So it's possible that some rich accountant in Downey, California has it sitting in his yard or something.
Now, before I wrap up this section of our podcast, Matt, it would be completely remiss of me if I didn't bring up with you a little detail that I enjoyed and spotted in this movie, which was I don't know, I think maybe you've anticipated where I'm going here, but did you enjoy the President Obama presidential portrait that popped up very regularly within this movie?
I absolutely did, because even though I had seen this and reviewed it before, I wasn't, I guess, as big on the presidential portrait. That seems to be something that's come up recently on the podcast, or I'm sorry, on the blog, to make note of those. So this is our Obama. We haven't had an Obama yet. So so at this point now, we have every president from Reagan through to Obama has had a presidential portrait in the movie. So I don't know how we get before Reagan. I don't know if there's a Carter or a Nixon floating around there. And I don't know if any movies have used Trump, and especially Biden's movie, tough one because only a few years. But yeah, so we do have the addition of Obama now. So that made it official. So that's one great part about this movie as well.
Well, I would have thought the rarest presidential portrait in a movie would presumably be Gerald Ford. I would guess. I mean, who would even bother putting a portrait of him in their movie?
Yeah, especially because part of the rules is that they've got to be direct-to-video movies. So it's like the movies generally have to be made from no earlier than the early '80s. But then I was thinking with Nixon, that maybe, you know, a movie that takes place in Vietnam would have had his picture. But you're right, like Ford would be one that, yeah, you know, I don't even know how long he served for. It wasn't that long. So yeah, I mean, I guess Ford, you know, it's going to probably be hard for me to get anything earlier than Reagan. It's, you know, it's going to be a movie doing something like a movie like this that takes place in the 70s that I guess feels like they have to do it.
Or maybe a film that sort of has a flashback to an earlier decade, and you know, what finer way of establishing the period in which your film is taking place than by having you know, a portrait of the president displayed somewhere in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think what I have to do is I got to delve more into those Philippine Vietnam War films that were shot in the Philippines. I just need to like binge a whole bunch of those and hope I get some, you know, some Lyndon Johnson and Nixon, whoever, you know, that kind of thing.
I can't think of a better use of your time, Matt.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at the exploding helicopter action.
I miss Daddy.
I miss him too, baby.
Joanna Burke was a lonely woman and a loving mother with a beautiful daughter.
She's a wonderful child.
Until a twist of fate
Emma! Stop!
swept her into another dimension. Now,
Can you hear me?
she has awakened in a parallel world
Oh my God, where's Emma?
where her daughter no longer exists.
The paramedics who brought you in didn't mention anything about a child, Miss Randolph.
My name's not Randolph.
They found this in the purse lying next to you. It's you, isn't it?
She has stepped into another woman's life.
Well, if you're Joanna Burke, then who's Sarah Randolph?
I have no idea.
A woman who looks like her.
It's like some kind of curtain just lifts, and for an instant, I'm reconnected with where I came from.
A woman who is capable of murder.
You don't remember your own son?
Where is he?
You forgot Eric was murdered?
You think I killed my own child?
I'm sure of it.
Trapped in another reality.
I have no idea how I got here, but as long as everyone thinks I'm Sarah Randolph, I need to find out all I can about her.
I'm trying to believe you.
She has found the only thing that is real.
You're the only good thing in my life right now.
But she is caught.
Two places can exist in time side by side and nearly identical, but somehow I've gotten stuck on the wrong side.
Between leaving behind the man who gave her hope
If you love me, let me go.
and saving her daughter from the woman who stole her life.
How do I get there? Please tell me how to get there.
Sherilyn Fenn stars in a terrifying tale of good and evil.
Mommy!
How can you find your way home when you live on Nightmare Street?
We're back, and now we're looking at the exploding helicopter action, and there are no fewer than 3 that we have to examine. The first occurs when Bigfoot clambers up a tree, grabs a helicopter, and then throws it to the ground where it explodes. Later on, a second helicopter explodes when Bigfoot throws a trash can at it, causing it to crash and explode. Then lastly, a news helicopter is blown up after Bigfoot swats it, damaging the whirlybird before it smashes into the ground and explodes. Matt, what did you make of the exploding helicopter action?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think from, you know, the times I've been on your show, this is the first. This is, you know, probably like the most. I don't know, not pedestrian, but like just most like straight ahead kind of explode. You know, like there's nothing fancy going on here. It's just, you know, a monster blowing up helicopters. I mean, I think the fact that they do 3, it's almost like, because I don't want to put it past the Asylum to think that, like, you know, exploding helicopter is a tag on IMDb, and they're like, we're going to make sure we get that tag on IMDb, you know, like for whatever else that we get on there. Because, yeah, it felt like they weren't messing around. They were going to make sure, you know, they were going to get their exploding helicopters in.
Yeah, they were very vanilla, I have to say. I mean, the first one, there was a little bit of garnish on that one. We see the rotors come off and they spin off, and Sherilyn Fenn, who's driving in her police cruiser, she has to dodge her car around them. So we do get that, a little bit of a extra jeopardy in that way. The second one, I mean, We did get to watch film history here. I mean, this is the first time that a trash can has been used to explode a helicopter, and the only time, not just the first time, the only time trash can's been used in that way. But it's very much blink and you'd miss it. And I don't think anyone's aware of the fact that they're making film history with the staging of this exploding helicopter. And if they'd been aware of it, perhaps they would have worked the scene slightly differently, made a little bit more out of it. And the third one is equally as brief. And that one, in some ways, I think probably I kind of enjoyed that one because there seemed to be a cut to some model work rather than CGI, and some sort of enjoyably low budget model work as this helicopter sort of falls to the ground in front of what I'm guessing is a model version of Mount Rushmore. But it's very brief, and we only really get kind of clarification that helicopter exploded a few moments later when we kind of sort of see kind of a camera shot which incorporates like the burning wreckage. So all told, not really an awful lot to discuss here, as you say. Just perhaps a tick box exercise in including some exploding helicopters in the film to get that all important IMDb tag.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess so. I didn't think about that the trash can one. So that actually does because I was thinking about the ones I've been on, like Last of the Finest. That was a helicopter that was felled by the sewage pipe or
septic tank.
Exploding
septic tank.
Right. Exactly. And then we had two dream sequence helicopter explosions. And so I've for Dancing It's On and I can't think of the name of the cartoon one that we watched
Chuck Steele, Night of the Trampires.
That's right. Yeah. So there's two, and so I guess I can say that the trash can. I was here for the one trash can helicopter explosions. I guess in that sense I'm here for some of these unique ones as well.
I think the only other thing really to mention with this sequence is the fact that we get to. All of the exploding helicopters here are examples of a trope that I find very irritating. Really, as a fan of exploding helicopters, is the inability of pilots to stay a safe distance away from something that is very clearly going to put them in danger if they get too close. And all of the pilots here, they're flying too close to Bigfoot. When there's absolutely no need. I mean, I would have thought the whole point in being in a helicopter is that you can hover safely at a safe distance from this hairy horror and not get swatted, grabbed, or thrown by it, and certainly stay out of trash can range.
Right. Well, I was going to say that's probably the one, right? Is the trash can? Like maybe you think you're safe, and all of a sudden the trash can gets rolled at you. But you're right. It is kind of a fascinating idea. It is like almost like again like the Asylum didn't really care, right? Like instead of being like, why would the helicopter fly this close to Bigfoot? They're just going to be like, well, of course he would, and because this is how we're going to get our exploding helicopter.
Okay, well, I think that just about wraps things up for this show. Matt, thank you for joining me once again. Before you head off in your microlight, is there anything you want to plug?
So my site, dtvconnoisseur.blogspot.com, that's where you can find everything. Links to our YouTube channel, which we've been putting up videos there, our podcast, which you can find on most major podcatchers, and then also my books. My newest book is Nadia and Aiden, which you can find on Amazon in Kindle Unlimited, and in paperback.
As always, don't forget to check out the Exploding Helicopter website for more reviews and information about films where helicopters explode. If you like what we do, you can really help us out by spreading the word on social media. And you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We'll be back soon. But until then, what should people do, Matt?
Keep on watching the sky for those exploding helicopters.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.